Intros are really hard. Hey everyone, today trying to talk about books because I am obsessed with books. I love books. I have been a reader my whole entire life. I've been reading since I was a little kid, and I did read a few different things as a kid. Eventually I got into the just fantasy book mindset. In the last couple years I've been wanting to try different books, different genres and stuff like that. Today I wanted to talk about my top 5 favorite book series. All the books I'm talking about are part of a series. 2 of the books in the series are ones where you don't have to read them in order if you don't want to, but it does make the experience much better if you do read them in order. Admittedly, one of them I did not read in order. My bad. Anyway, let's just get started with my top 5. So for the top 5, originally I was just making my top 5 favorite books without really much of an order. As I was arranging them, I did find that I do have an order of which I like these books. Let's get started. So the first book I am going to talk about is the Cassandra Clare Infernal Devices, the series. So the book is set in the late 1800s Victorian era. You follow a girl named Tessa Gray who is coming to London to go find her brother, who invited her to come down and see her after their aunt passed away. And then she gets taken in by these 2 people called the Dark Sisters, teaching her this power that she strangely has and has no idea where it came from. So eventually Tessa is saved by a strange 17-year-old boy named Will Herondale, who she finds as part of this group called the Shadow Hunters, who are protectors of the world against demons and monsters. Very typical stuff. So this does have a lot of the young adult fantasy tropes. It's got some romance, it's got the good versus evil aspect, the right and wrong, risky things. But I do find that the books are really interesting. Cassandra Clare wrote these after the Mortal Instruments series, and I read the Mortal Instruments series first and then read this one, and you can definitely see quite a bit of a difference in writing, character development, stuff like that, and I actually enjoy almost every single character in this book, even ones that are supposed to be annoying, and yet I love them. Victorian era is a really interesting time period to set any story into because it's the transition between olden, traditional kind of stuff into more modernizing kind of things. I find the stories really enticing. I definitely like the main character in this one more than Mortal Instruments series. Tessa is much more interesting. She has a bit of recklessness, but it's not overbearing, I find. And then the 2 main guys she meets, Will Herondale and Jem Caristars, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. They're both intriguing in their own way. A lot of the other characters are really quite fun to read. This is actually a young adult fantasy that I do recommend people read if they're interested in that genre or if they're interested in fantasy. This is actually one of the better ones, personally. So the next story I want to talk about is not a fantasy story. This one is a modern-day crime thriller, and it is the Michael Connelly Harry Bosch series. This one is Two Kinds of Truth. It is the 20th book of the Harry Bosch series. This is actually the first one I picked up. I found it randomly in a bookstore and I loved the idea of it, so I took it. While it was the 20th book of the series, and I have been working through the series from the beginning, I actually find it's not that disappointing, and there wasn't as much spoiling moments. There's actually a lot of thought about what happened between the first one and now, because he's definitely very different in the first one. It's about this Los Angeles homicide detective working in the Hollywood division, solving crimes as usual. So in the story you go to typical solving crimes and stuff, but during the story I find you get a lot of character development, you get a lot of insight in terms of politics, people, and there's also interesting development in how the crime is being built up and solved. The crimes being solved aren't as easy and simple as some of them are made out to believe at the beginning. The thing about the crimes too is that they're never simple and easy to solve. There's a lot of twists and turns in the story where it's so shocking and yet it works. Like, it's really interesting when there's just sudden twist or sudden new development where you realize, oh shoot. The thing I like about it too is that none of the crimes are solved simply or easily. It's very disappointing as a very emotional, moral kind of person, but as a storyteller it's really interesting because then you know not everything's gonna be wrapped up in a perfect bow. Harry Bosch, when it comes to solving crimes, is very black and white in terms of the fact that nothing matters but the truth. Bringing the person who did this crime to justice. He is sometimes reckless and just does his own thing. And then his superiors are trying to tell him you can't just do that, which frustrates him because he's like, I'm trying to figure out the truth. But with them, it's like, it's more than just finding out the truth. There's the politics, there's the approach. But you see him develop as someone who's trying to deal with the fact that I can't just do whatever I want, but at the same time, I can't just worry about the politics. I have to find the truth. Third series I've been really enjoying. This one is also a thriller story, but this one's more so modern day historical thriller. I hope that makes sense. I'll explain in a moment. It's actually the first book that got me into the thriller genre novels, and that is Steve Barry's Cotton Malone series. This one is the Templar Legacy, which is the first book of the series. This is actually the series where not only did I just pick up a random book of the series, I was actually reading them randomly, because it didn't really occur to me that there's actually a specific order to read them in, but I've already gone so far into not reading them in order that I haven't even bothered trying. So the series follows mainly Cotton Malone, who is an ex-Marine operative and an ex-agent. When you meet him, he's actually a bookseller in Denmark, which I found really interesting because he's not in the field anymore. He's just selling used books. In this first book, when you meet him, he's just doing his own thing, and then he finds out that his old boss slash colleague, Stephanie Nell, is getting involved in finding out about the Templar legacy, which he gets himself sucked into. Wanting to help her, but also her asking for his help. And it's a really interesting concept because it is solving a mystery, following clues, but it's also a historical mystery. So in the Knights Templar, they were exterminated in the 14th century, but yet they're connected to a modern day problem. I really enjoy it because you're solving mysteries, you're following puzzles, but it all has to do with history as well, and that really enticed me into the series. The first book I actually read was not the Templar Legacy. It was called The Lost Order. It was set in American history, and a lot of things were confusing because it was about government and politics, but I really enjoyed the book. I guess in a way you could say it's like National Treasure, but I will say this is much better than National Treasure. It's not just Connor Malone, it's not just Stephanie. Throughout the way you get to meet other characters. There's a lot of people in the series that overlap and you do see come back later on. So one of the big reasons I love this series is not because it's a really good thriller, but also because it's got history, and I love me some history. So in the number 2 slot, yes, number 2, this will come as a shock to a lot of people who know me because they're going to be shocked about the fact that this is my number 2 and not my number 1, and that is the classic Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling. This is such a big, important series in my life. Fun fact, I didn't read this series till college. It was not something that was prominent in my life. I had seen the movies growing up, but I never really got addicted to it. But then I read the books and I was hooked. People who may not know what this series is about, you're following a kid named Harry Potter from his perspective, who finds out he's a wizard and there's this whole other world involved and his parents are part of it, and he's learning about himself, his powers, and along the way he gets to find the love and friendship that he didn't have. And one of the things I love about this series is that it's so detailed and in-depth. Like, it's a whole world in there. And not just the world itself, but the story itself is so detailed. I'm really enjoying the character development and the world they're in and how things overlap. Like, there are things brought up in the earlier books that get mentioned again in the later book. And when I got these books, I got them in a really nice box set, gratefully, with some amazing covers. I guess one of the big things I like about this series too is that there's a whole world into it you can get involved, because there's the Hogwarts houses, there's the classes, there's the wizarding jobs. There's so much to talk about with other people that it's one of the great things about the series that you can talk to other people about it. Not everyone has to be a crazy in-depth fan about it. Alright, so I'm going to talk about my number 1 favorite series, and of course the big question is, what the heck do you like more than Harry Potter? Because I am a very obsessed Harry Potter fan, but the series I am going to talk about is definitely one I like more than Harry Potter for a couple of reasons, and that is the Faithful and the Fallen series by John Gwynne. This series is set in medieval times. So the story starts with a few characters. First you meet Corbin, who is your typical young teenager who wants to be a warrior, who wants to protect and serve his king. And you also meet Evnus, who is part of the same king's ranks as an advisor, but you find out right away that he's up to something sinister. And then there's Veradis. I'm going to pronounce these wrong. So he is the newest member of the warband for Prince Nether, who is the son of the High King, and he is looking to also find his place. So the series follows actually quite a number of characters. It's got a Game of Thrones-esque where each chapter is devoted to a specific character. But one of the things I did like about the series is that some of the chapters are really short. You get to find out what that character's doing, and then you move on to the next character, and I find the pacing to be really, really awesome. I personally did not get bored at all reading the series. There's a lot to take in. The first book is definitely more informational. It's enough information where it's helping you understand the world, but not too much where it feels like you're just stuck in a history lecture. So the story takes place in the Banished lands, and it's had a history of men versus giants fighting, and eventually there's a calm of peace for a little bit, but then the giants start causing trouble again, and then there's other mysterious things going on, and then there's suddenly this prophecy that's meant to happen. Yes, I know, it's like, prophecy, really? That's really old news. It really is. I find the prophecy idea in the series works really, really well, and if you do read the series to the end, you'll understand what I mean. What I like about the series is that the prophecy is not as prominent in it. Yes, it is an important aspect. It is sort of the driving force of a lot of characters, but it's not the only important part. You actually see character development, different perspectives, different views, and this is a good versus evil, but it's not as simple as that. And there are characters where, yes, they are good, but they do make some moral questioning choices. And there are some, like, not so good, evilish, or evil characters where most of them, not all of them, but most of them, you understand why they're doing what they're doing. I mean, they're still wrong, and they're still bad, and they should still be stopped. It's a simple, in-depth, awesome fantasy series. I'm recently starting to find people online that have enjoyed the series quite a bit. Also, one of the other reasons why I like this book is because it is so thick. I love big, thick books. So that is my top 5 favorite series. There are a lot of other books I have liked, a lot of other books I've read over the years. Thanks for watching. I hope this gives you some insight into some pretty interesting books to read. Have a great day, and I hope to see you in the next video, whenever that will be.